That day the notice arrived, the heavens above our dead-end street seemed flawless, as if taunting my situation. The sunlight was intense, the atmosphere pristine, and my photovoltaic arrays were soaking in the rays, resembling felines lazing on a ledge. I had dedicated months to designing that setup, hoarding every last cent following 2 seasons of power failures and utility charges that seemed like a cruel jest. Observing my energy gauge rotate in reverse initially, it felt like a profound victory against the cosmos. Finally, I wasn't merely a customer of the network. I was contributing. However, residing in a locality governed by a homeowners association means such autonomy rarely escapes attention. The packet was bulky, bearing a crimson infraction warning, akin to a mark of shame for domestic misdeeds. The scent of the printing was palpable from afar, a mix of ink and sheer hubris. As per the paperwork, my arrays were upsetting the community's visual harmony and posing a glare risk. Disregard the fact that a neighbor nearby had a metallic covering reflective enough to daze an aviator, or the association's meeting hall possessed its own concealed photovoltaic arrangement behind a cosmetic barrier. Instead, my setup was the issue. My installation insulted the deities of bland uniformity. I recall being on my pavement, document grasped, whispering, "All right, this is a game they're choosing." Our association's head, Barbara, was a person who treated command like a pastime. In her mid-50s, with flawless coiffure and a notepad seemingly fused to her palm. The sort to inform you your lawn showed excessive zeal or your postbox was overly unique. That evening, I resolved to speak with her politely. Her headquarters was no real workplace, merely the rear of her carport where she conducted her supposed board adjudications. In reality, humiliating public ordeals featuring baked goods. "Mr. Miller," she began, her tone acute enough to sever the atmosphere. "We have gotten numerous grievances regarding the reflectivity of your installation. They breach our accord provision." "Community accord?" I echoed. "You're saying my generation of renewable energy is ruining the atmosphere?" A committee participant snickered until Barbara cast a lethal glare his way. "This is not amusing, Mr. Miller. You are required to conform inside a fortnight or incur penalties." "What amount?" I inquired. $50 daily. "Seems you're the individual producing revenue at this point," I remarked. Her mandible tensed. "The regulations are explicit." I inclined slightly closer. "Barbara, those regulations were drafted prior to solar technology's very existence. Don't you find them obsolete?" Her mouth formed a grin that failed to touch her gaze. "In that case, maybe you ought to have sought approval preceding the setup. Unawareness of the guidelines is no defense." I departed a gathering certain that logic would be ineffective. Barbara wasn't safeguarding stability. She was safeguarding her dominance. I recognized a pattern. Individuals who confuse power with a mission. They require your submission merely to elevate themselves. At supper, my spouse Kelly advised me to drop it. "You are agitating a wasp swarm," she stated, decanting some vintage. "Occasionally, one must disturb a colony to locate the ruler," I replied. She rotated her eyes. "And the result when they attack?" "I will construct a larger colony." I intended it humorously. It happened I was correct. In the following days, I submitted a rebuttal, referencing our state statute on safeguarding renewable power, an actual ordinance that essentially forbade HOA from limiting solar setups except when they presented a genuine risk. Barbara's artistic tastes were not a valid reason. Her reaction was to intensify her stance, dispatching daily infraction notices, every single one more subtly hostile than the previous. I paid them no mind. Later, one midday, I found her on my land, hunched beside my utility gauge as if probing a felony site. I emerged onto the veranda and shouted, "Require assistance, Barbara." She startled, her face crimson. "Merely recording." "Recording what precisely?" "The daylight." "You are acting unhelpfully, Mr. Miller. The committee refuses to accept resistance." "And I refuse to accept encroachment." Her nose widened. "You have 10 seconds to depart, or I am phoning the constable." She departed. That evening, I shared the incident incognito on a nearby resident's message board. It emerged I was not unique. Scores of individuals contacted me sharing their personal accounts. penalized for postbox elevation, for mulch shade, for displaying incorrect festive illumination. Barbara's association wasn't a collective. It was a tyranny featuring landscaping. Then the tempest arrived. It advanced from the west. The firmament became the hue of an injury, then ruptured. Electricity tore the skyline. Gales roared past the barriers, and in moments, the entire vicinity lost power, save for my residents. My storage unit engaged instantly, buzzing into operation with self-satisfied accuracy. The lamp shone warmly, consistently. The freezer continued functioning. The air conditioner hummed. I remained at the casement, observing my fellow residents emerge into the downpour, gazing at my illuminated panes as though I had harnessed flame. A rap followed. Barbara was there, drenched completely, hair matted to her scalp, notepad now worthless. "Our electricity is gone," she uttered, teeth gritted. "Might we perhaps link to your setup for a short while?" I paused. "You're referring to the photovoltaic cells you're penalizing me over." "This is a crisis," she stated, tone quavering. "Certainly you can be rational." "Oh, I'm rational," I replied, rationally wary of breaching HOA regulations. Wouldn't wish to disturb the neighborhood's tranquility. "Mr. Miller, I beg you." I nearly pitted her. Nearly. Then I recalled the notices, the penalties, the condescending manner she used with me. "Apologies, Barbara. I wish I could assist, yet my installation lacks HOA sanction." Her mouth quivered. She pivoted, marching angrily into the deluge. Come dawn, the utility teams were active once more. Barbara circulated a group message lauding homeowners who stayed composed and supportive through the blackout. No reference to her visiting my home. However, 3 days passed, and an alarm appeared on my surveillance application. My energy consumption had surged during the night. I inspected the connection, traced the wire beside my barrier, and stiffened. A cord extended from my outer connection point directly beneath a boundary. For an instant, I simply gaped. Then I chuckled. It was audacious. Credit where it's due. I disconnected the wire, wound it tidily, and placed it on her stoop, adding a small note. "Illegitimate consumption identified. Kindly reach out to your HOA regulatory official." The following day, she convened an urgent session, blaming unidentified hooligans for meddling with association assets. I rested in the rear seats, drinking my brew, gesturing with understanding. It was then I realized she was trapped. A week passed. A fresh electronic mail was distributed. A revised HOA power adherence guideline. Every homeowner with photovoltaic arrays was required to provide complete diagrams for security validation. Just 2 of us possessed such installations. Myself and elderly Mr. Grant, an ex-engineer present in the area from its inception. He rang me ere I completed the message. "This is absurdity," he growled. "They cannot request confidential information." "She's faking," I stated. "She merely desires a dominance returned." "You feel we ought to disregard it?" "No," I replied. "We'll adhere, but by our own rules." That midday, I dispatched to the association a 22-page document, saturated with the most cryptic specialized terminology I could conjure. Current capacities, miniature converters, fabricated abbreviations. Barbara answered inside 60 minutes. "We will assess this with our security panel." She possessed no security panel. I confirmed, but the vicinity had observers, and residents were noticing her decompose. Dawn patrols using her mobile's camera, gauging turf with a measuring stick, citing individuals for unsanctioned ornamental pebbles. She penalized the Johnsons over their lawn figurine. She chided an adolescent for stopping too near the curb. Her fixation grew apparent. Dominance was now her dependency. Following that was the next tempest, larger, more furious, the sort that causes timber to moan. Near 12, the network failed completely, this instant across the county. Kelly and I relaxed on the sofa consuming hot chocolate as the gale shrieked externally. The subsequent dawn, the community was bedlam. Older folks fretted over the cold. Households searched frantically for portable chargers. Then, resembling a nightmare, Barbara materialized on my veranda once more. She omitted rapping this instance. "I require entry to your setup," she barked. "Individuals are dangerously cold." I observed her. The female who previously schooled me on Concord now quivered, locks frazzled, tone fractured. You're referring to the identical energy you labeled hazardous. This is not an occasion for frivolity, she yelled. People require aid. In that case, perhaps you ought to have endorsed the arrays that might have aided them. Her tone mellowed. I beg you, merely for 24 hours. Kelly brushed my limb. We have some to share, she murmured. I considered it. Assisting her signaled her victory. Denying made me the antagonist. Thus, I chose a tertiary path. All right, I stated. However, it isn't for your benefit. It's for the other residents. And you will officially recognize my setup as secure in the forthcoming HOA newsletter. Her nose widened. That is extortion. No, I replied, that's bargaining. She gazed at me, then acquiesced. I guided her to the rear connection point, extended a wire to the association hole's generator port. This supplies warmth and essential illumination, I clarified, not for chilling your vintage. Before dusk, 50% of the vicinity was lit. Residents celebrated, expressed gratitude, and delivered biscuits. Barbara remained on the periphery, observing her command disintegrate like sodium in precipitation. Yet she had not finished. 2 days hence, with electricity returned, I reviewed my records and almost guffawed. My setup registered an enormous nightly consumption, tenfold the anticipated amount. The time markers corresponded to the period Barbara held access. She had repeated it, siphoning additional current for her personal residence while feigning it served all. Now, I possessed evidence. The following HOA assembly had attendees filling the space. News had circulated. Barbara presided at the table's front, head high, digits tapping her mallet. We are convened to review neighborhood adherence, she announced, encompassing illicit power consumption. Please you raise a topic. I interjected, lifting a file, as I possessed some information which could be useful. I distributed hard copies, graphs, time markers, and consumption data. Here is my setups generation during the blackout. You will observe an increase from 11:43 post-meridium until 6:12 ante-meridium, aligning with domestic consumption. The wire was linked via the HOA port, sanctioned by a single individual. Barbara's expression remained static, though her joints paled. This is preposterous, she spat. You have no evidence of the user. In fact, I do. I turned another sheet. The sanctioned document you endorse includes your identity, the hour, and your sign-off. You permitted connection exclusively for the association hole. Nonetheless, the records indicate a prolonged burden matching a private dwelling, approximately 5 kilowatt-A's hourly. That's numerous lights, a whisper spread amidst the crowd. You involve the authorities in this, she questioned. Naturally, I answered. Openness promotes accord, correct? The chamber buzzed with murmurs. Mr. Grant snickered. Individuals penalized for absurdities grinned. The first occasion in ages. This is defamation, Barbara barked. You are attempting to humiliate me. No, Barbara, I stated calmly. You accomplished that independently when you connected to my setup after deeming it unlawful. Her mallet struck the surface with a dull thud. This assembly is concluded. Nobody stirred. Her spouse, Steve, arose from the rear. Barbara is as factual. Remain uninvolved, she retorted. I advise you to cease creating adversaries among residents. This is madness. She glared at him as if he'd committed treason against her reign. Then she glanced toward me, gaze moist, tone quavering. You believe you are victorious, correct? You are merely an arrogant small insurgent incapable of adhering to regulations. Regulations are acceptable, I countered, until they are transformed into armaments. The chamber became utterly still. Then an individual began applauding, quietly initially, then with increasing volume. Barbara uttered nothing further. Before the week concluded, she was removed from her presidency via vote. I presumed that was a conclusion. Yet individuals like Barbara do not vanish. They transform. A fortnight later, shiny leaflets began appearing in postboxes, promoting a thing named the Harmony Energy Alliance, a neighborhood-focused photovoltaic project. The emblem bore a striking resemblance to our prior HOA insignia. Below, in minuscule text, Director Barbara A. She had refashioned herself into a power prognosticator. The pamphlet pledged discounts and collective energy dividends if homeowners enrolled in a consolidated photovoltaic grid. My interpretation: she desired dominance once more, via an alternative route. I investigated the business location. It was a parcel service box. The web page was laden with generic images and drivel regarding synergy via sustainability. Nevertheless, a handful of her dedicated adherents enrolled. One midday, I passed a residence where 3 males were discharging worn-out old storage cells, connecting them absent-mindedly. Ox leaped, and she was present once more, notepad grasped, yelling commands. Persisting as royalty, I see. I hollered. She pivoted, that familiar, fragile grin displayed, still meddling. Connecting second-hand lithium cells in a carport isn't guidance. Barbara, it's incendiarism. Her gaze glinted. You believe you're the sole individual comprehending energy? I achieve results. I desired a contest, but what use is it arguing with one who mistakes bedlam for advancement? A week hence, one of her setups ignited. A furious chemical conflagration illuminated the avenue. Firemen yelling, residents observing aghast. Barbara was present, shrieking about sabotage. Spotting me, she indicated. You caused this. I lifted my palms. Barbara, I was slumbering. The blaze captain interrupted her. These are uncertified lithium cells. You're fortunate the dwelling didn't ignite. By dawn, pictures of the inferno were widespread. The municipality penalized her substantially. She disappeared for a period subsequently. Then, one dusk, I discovered a message affixed to my entrance. You believe this is concluded? You usurped all I had. You will witness true power. That evening, my sensor lamp activated. Barbara waited at my driveway's perimeter, merely gazing for 10 seconds. Then she departed. It was then I understood this was no longer about electricity. It concerned me. The ensuing weeks were silent, excessively silent. Then my setup malfunctioned. A notification materialized on my console. Did you genuinely believe energy is a thing you possess? Initially, I suspected electronic intrusion, yet the notification wasn't from the internet. It arrived via the power supply itself. I phoned Mr. Grant, seeking assistance. He pledged to visit come morning. He never arrived. Cardiac arrest, it was ruled. Normal demise. That evening, I remained solitary in the blackness, the arrays buzzing gently outdoors. At 2 a.m., the current dropped by precisely 3%, then surged. The sequence recurred nightly, same hour, like a tap on the network. Then the text materialized once more. Still believe the illumination is yours. I severed all connections. No wireless, no intelligent links, only an isolated circuit. But at 2 a.m., the identical fluctuation occurred. The identical text via current, not information. That is when I grasped it. She wasn't merely fixated on dominance. She had transformed into it. The following evening, the illumination in my residence blazed simultaneously, so intensely it pained the eyes. A sound traversed the atmosphere, indistinct yet tangible, resonating within the partitions. Cole, you are not tangible, I murmured. You seized my illumination, the sound stated. You seized your own. You are departed. I transformed into it, she uttered gently. You presumed severing cables would grant you safety. But energy moves. It perpetually discovers linkage. The illumination faded. What is your desire? I inquired. Equilibrium, she murmured. You and I, opposing flows. I constructed the pathway. You finalized it. Then all became black. Externally, a hum ascended through the vicinity. Individually, dwellings illuminated once more. Not via the network, but via me. My arrays, my storage cells, every cable I had ever positioned, all synchronizing to her cadence. I attempted to activate the shut-off mechanism, but it was innate. The safeguard was bypassed. Then I perceived it. A chuckle. Subdued, warped, definitely hers. You erected barriers around illumination. I erected conduits. Electricity fractured the heavens. Conductors exploded like pyrotechnics, and the planet turned dark once more. When morning arrived, the atmosphere held scent of iron and moisture. The whole avenue was lifeless. No electricity, no noise. My arrays were charred, yet undamaged. My display still functioned on its battery. A single notification flashed on the display. Transmission finished. I ventured outdoors, dazed. On the crest past the development, one dwelling remained luminous. Barbara's former home. It was unoccupied, yet its lamps throbbed, measured, intentional. Brief, lengthy, brief. Her identifiers in telegraphy code. 2 days hence, Kelly returned. The utility provider termed it an anomalous fluctuation. The HOA, its remnants, remain mute. But at nighttime, occasionally when the atmosphere is motionless, I can observe that crest from my casement. And periodically, those lamps pulse anew, brief, lengthy, brief, like a pulsation within the gloom. 3 queries disturb my sleep when they do. What if she genuinely fused with a network? What if each iota of current traversing this vicinity bears her imprint? And what if the next time the illumination fails, it isn't a power cut, but merely her choosing the moment to communicate? Because occasionally, when the residence is still and the air buzzes low, I vow I can perceive a murmur amidst the interference. The energy perpetually returns. So, I now pose to you, what action would you have taken? Would you have challenged her, disregarded her, or simply relocated? Have you ever encountered an individual who could not exist without dominance? Post your opinions in the replies and share if energy truly does deprave. What occurs when an individual becomes the energy itself?